Okay, yesterday I posted the nickel-plated ammunition with the copper bullet. It's a ballistic tip. It's a law enforcement only round, or used to be. It's got a staked, it's got a hardened post. And I just wanted to check after sitting overnight, nobody bothering it, thinking, well, maybe it's just some kind of discoloration, but no. It doesn't rub off. This is etched. It's actually changed the coating. It's actually got in there and changed the nickel. And you can see it. This one's at 12 hours. This one has a full metal jacket. It's a flat nose, FN, flat point, FP, however you want to call it. But you can see where it's been in the mud. See the discoloration there. And it doesn't rub off. Still there. So this was sitting down like this. So this part right here is exposed to the air. This was sitting down like this in the mud. And that's where you see the discoloration, because you can see it. So I just want to look at these again to make sure that there's nothing different and not saying anything that isn't true. This is the one that was in there for 12 hours. And like I said, when something sits in mud, it gets mud in it. This is what you call exculpatory, because CSI Tech could have done this. This is pretty simple. Pretty frickin' simple. But this is what you call exculpatory, and you're looking at Latin, and you're looking at X. It's another way of saying away from. And then the root word, the base of culpability. So it's away from culpability. Simple terms. Exculpatory, it's away from culpability. It's showing that you're pretty much innocent. It's a nice way of saying it. Because in order for you to have a pristine round from Richard Allen's firearm, just about would have had to been ejected at the time the bodies were found, which is most likely what happened. The ballistic tip that's on that round appears to be a law enforcement only round. And like I said, things are different today. These right here are old. These were in my Glock 40 that I used to carry when I was a law enforcement officer. And things that you stick in mud get mud in them. They get dirty. But you couldn't just come off the street and buy a box of these. You needed a police ID, and best would be to have something on letterhead so that you're on a list of authorized purchasers. And the place we used to go was a gun shop there in Greenwood, Indiana. That's where I got my Glock from. I had to start out with Smith & Wesson 9mm, but then I traded up to the Glock 40 cal. So we know that this is at 6 hours. So in order for that round to be pristine, it had to be less than 6 hours. But we know that round sat there for 22 hours. Because supposedly he racked the round and then killed the girls. And they found the girls and that round the next day. So the bodies had been on the ground for 22 hours, and that round was in between the two for 22 hours. From 2:30 to 12:30. 14:30 to 12:30. And they laid there overnight in the dark. So, you know for a fact it didn't come from Richard Allen's firearm. And we know that Richard Allen is innocent. Then we have his vehicle driving down the road. And there's a lot of strange things. Everything is blurry and half-assed, and that's the half-assed is, I think, the key term for this whole debacle. But the roof line on that car is flat, fairly flat. The roof line on a Ford Focus is rounded. So the car that's out of focus, that you don't have 1028, you don't have the vehicle tags to establish it, you don't have a picture of the driver, you haven't secured that vehicle, you don't have the driver out of the vehicle, you didn't ID the driver, so all you can say is you got a car that looks similar to his car, but it's driving down a road that he said in his testimony they didn't drive on. But of course, because he's a criminal, he's going to lie about that. But then you get into the route, when it's easier to go through town and take a few minutes, or you can take the route they're saying he took, which takes almost 20 minutes. It makes no sense at all. So I want to do the same thing for the brass. So the one on the far left is 3 hours. It's in the mud for 3 hours. This is brass with a copper round. You start seeing a little bit of discoloration. You can tell where it's been sitting in the mud. But it's not super pronounced. You could mistake that and call it pristine, except it does have mud on it. Typically things that are in mud do get mud on them. Then you have this one that was at 6 hours. And right there you start to see some discoloration. Similar to what the nickel does. And then this one was 12 hours. And now this one you start really seeing the discoloration. Yeah. And that's not something you can rub off. So there's your discoloration. Oh, and by the way, yeah, it has dirt on it. It has mud on it. All the little crevices and stuff. Yeah, it's got mud on it. These don't show a lot of debris that gets, typically the small fine grit that gets in between the primer and the case. Well, because the bullet supposedly fell nose tip down and landed in the mud like that. So that's the way they were placed. Is that the exact angle they were in? No, probably not. But we got 3 hours. Where are we at? 3 hours. 6 hours, 12 hours, and you can see the progression of the discoloration. This one right here will go 24 hours. And then I have a control, which is pristine. And I will send all these to the attorney, Mr. Baldwin. That round did not come from Richard Allen's firearm. And we know that. We know that because the CSI tech actually said that. Until she fired it and put 50,000 pounds per square inch on it. But I already beat that horse to death, I think. But the marks on it were not significant in correlation or congruent or same or similar to what they found. So the next thing that you do, and they won't do, is find who was on scene that day, that morning, and test their firearms. And you will find whose firearm that round came out of. You're talking 2017 to 2025. In 2 years now, you think about it, 2 years from now, this will be 10 years ago. That's because I went to Common Core, so I don't know how to subtract 25 from 17 or 17 from 25 because, you know, Common Core math. But, no, it was 8 years ago. 8 years ago. You diddled around from 2022. You have the FBI that was very clear, that thought Ron Logan was bridge guy. Ron Logan was definitely involved in this. Ron Logan is where the girls were found, his property. Ron Logan is the one that made up a false alibi when he would have been one of the few that knew the girls had been murdered. And so Richard Allen, after murdering the girls, he came down to the police and said, "Hey, I was on the bridge, but I didn't see anybody." That's because he's a sociopath, right? Yeah, you're full of crap if you want to believe that. Because the evidence doesn't show that. You have a prosecutor that says we follow the science. Well, that's a start. Why don't you follow the evidence too? But see, I just did months looking at the Rust movie and Alec Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez Reid. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with Karen Reid. The evidence doesn't fit our narrative, so we have to twist. We have to twist and contrive and everything else that we can do to get the evidence to fit what we want to say. Karen Reid driving backwards 24 miles an hour, shattering his glass that he was holding, would have shattered his hand. But he's got bite marks on his arm, but that couldn't be from the dog that they got rid of. You have a police detective, the owner of the home, that didn't even bother to come out and look for a Boston police officer that was killed and dumped on his front yard. He didn't even come out to check. Things that make you go, The best thing for evil to persist is if good men do nothing. Good men do nothing. And he talked to me about false convictions and stuff, and I can think back to Janine Nicarico. It's one of the first cases I was involved with, and that's a long time ago. And Orlando Cruz, one of the gentlemen that was supposedly involved when he wasn't, because I actually talked to the gang members, and they knew he wasn't there. He got 20 years, and it was later the prosecutor was prosecuted for falsifying evidence. CSI said that she'd never been wrong. Well, she has been. I got the proof. She was wrong. There is absolutely no way a pristine round comes out of mud without mud on it. And that's at the very beginning. 22 hours in the mud, having a nickel chrome plating without any kind of etching, discoloration, or tarnish or anything like that. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. See, everybody thinks about it, oh, it takes months. It takes months or years. No, it doesn't. It takes hours. Hours. This one here, the far left, is at 3 hours. 3 hours. 3 hours. And it's already starting to discolor. This one I didn't do a 3 hour. I did just the bullet. I did one at 3 hours and 6 hours. Separately, not here. But this one's is 6 hours. And it's already discolored. 12 hours. Definitely. Definitely you can see it. I like that picture the best because you can definitely see it. And then these are at 24 hours. So something at 22 hours, and not when you're already looking at 12 hours. That's after 12 hours of sitting in mud and how discolored it is, how it's etched. The actual pH of the mud, acid or alkaline, whatever it is, I don't have a pH meter here with me, or I wouldn't do that, but it's etching the nickel. And you could say, well, this mud is a little bit different than the mud that's by Deer Creek. But then you would have to get a sample of the mud from Deer Creek. And nobody ever did that, including the CSI tech that has never been wrong. No one has ever done that. So tell me how a pristine round comes out of mud after 22 hours and doesn't even have mud on it. Doesn't make sense. Does not make sense. This one's going to go, and at 24-hour point, I will pull it out. See what we get.